Welcome. My name is Michelle, part of the TribalHub team. You are here today for the Transform Your Tribal Education Programs, introducing Tribal Platforms Education webinar. Our special host today, Arctic IT. Thank you guys for sponsoring this webinar. We have Matt and Bryan on the call today. If somebody from your team wasn't able to make the webinar today, no need to worry. Tomorrow you will have an email that has a link where they can watch the webinar again. So feel free to use that as a resource, share it to anybody on your team who may not have been able to make it today. Okay, a couple of learning objectives to take away. Additionally, you guys will be able to get a real sneak peek into the solution itself, see it working in, as Bryan and Matt will demo for you. If you have any questions at all during this time, make sure you use the chat, or you can also use that Q&A feature, and that'll go right to me. So if any questions at any time, please put those in there. This is a great time to pick Matt and Bryan's brain, so make sure you use that.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. We're from Arctic IT, are excited to be with you today. Just a little intro here and we'll dive right in. All right. Well, I'd been asking for a hype video for years, and thankfully our wonderful marketing team got one turned around for us. So it's fun to be able to show that today, and we're excited to be here with you all and the wonderful folks from TribalHub to discuss tribal education programs and some great technology that is now available through our tribal platforms application suite to help you connect with your tribal students and help them achieve their goals. As Michelle said a little bit ago, I'm Matt Borkowski here with Arctic IT. I've been here for 18 years and spent most of that time working with our wonderful tribal customers. Alongside myself is Bryan Schmidt, who's a subject matter expert and really spends a lot of his time really getting into the details of the technology to make sure that it is helping our customers achieve their goals and improve the lives of their students and members. Our agenda for today, we're going to briefly talk about ourselves and the partnership that we have with our customers, and then dive into the solution itself, understanding some of the challenges that folks working within tribal education are facing today, and how technology can be a big part of providing a solution to those challenges. Some of that involves what it takes to move to a cloud application like tribal platforms. And then Bryan's going to really dive into the details of the tribal platforms application itself for education here, and give us a sneak peek of what that looks like and save a little time for Q&A at the end. So as Michelle said throughout, feel free to type in questions. And as Bryan is diving into the details, or maybe some questions that I could just answer through the chat, or we'll make sure to take some time to answer those verbally as necessary. Now at Arctic IT, we think of ourselves and pride ourselves for being long-term partners for our customers. Part of that is we are very proud to be an Alaska Native corporation owned by the Doyon Alaska Native Corporation. So being Native owned ourselves, we spend most of our time dedicated to providing great service and technology for our tribal government and gaming and non-gaming entity customers throughout the United States. With that, you see that we are not just geographically located. Bryan's in the North Dakota area. I'm down in Austin. Used to work from our Anchorage office. We have people working around the country supporting our customers from all over the country. And what you see here is the breadth of our tribal nations that we work with around the United States. And we've been very proud to have worked with 90 plus tribal organizations from around the country and lower 48 and Alaska. We're very proud to even have some of you joining us today as part of our presentation to see kind of the latest and greatest that Tribal Platforms has to offer. But now getting into the meat of what we're looking at today, and that is kind of the current state for a lot of tribal education technology, and what are some solution options that we have for that. And a lot of the reasons why our customers turn to us is to help with these sorts of challenges, right? How many times do we get locked in because all of our information is kind of held within the different tribal programs, but when we need to start doing things like doing validation of who's available for services, who's in a household, and what are maybe some income validation items that we need to have, and a lot of that information needs to be available for the different programs and services that are offered around the tribal government. And so with that, needing the ability to do that without making 15, 20 phone calls a day to do those verifications, not having to juggle different spreadsheets for everyone, or not requiring our tribal members to go change their address, maybe at 5 or 6 different departments or programs to continue to receive services. Because so many of our tribal members have gotten to the point where those expectations for being able to receive services digitally has skyrocketed, especially since the pandemic. And we look specifically at tribal education, and you think about how we want to interact more and more with the youth and our students. A lot of our college students that are going out have maybe never even set foot physically inside of a bank, because they've done all of that via the web, and wanting to be able to do more and more and interface more and engage more with our youth in ways that they're used to doing it. But then we're also all having to deal with finding the right number of staff as service expectations grow. So looking at ways that we can provide service more quickly, use technology to automate that so that we can deliver services faster and rely on fewer individuals having to be in every step of the process along the way. But first and of most priority is also making sure that no matter what technology you're utilizing, that your data is secure and that your data belongs to you. And as more and more technology has moved to the cloud to get the types of functionality that we're looking for, making sure that that data remains sovereign to your tribe, doesn't go outside of those regulations, and no one else has control or access to that outside of those that you give access to do that. And so all of those, the ability to meet all of those challenges are why Arctic IT is so excited about the Microsoft Cloud that we'll talk about more here in just a minute. Because realistically, a lot of tribal education departments are stuck in one scenario or another at this point that oftentimes starts with handling a lot of paper, and some of those maybe have been digitized already, but still sifting through paper or scanned documents to try to find the information you need is just slow, takes a lot of time. And we want to move faster in being able to provide better services and also make our jobs easier in the life of someone working in education. Right? Or no matter what you do, you probably have a half a dozen spreadsheets that you're accessing on a daily basis, trying to juggle the data, see who's enrolled and eligible for various services, tracking budgets available, and all those things. Eventually you're going to have some collection of spreadsheets that are just getting more and more difficult to manage. Links break, calculations are off, and you're always having to babysit the data in those spreadsheets. And then finally, there are those legacy on-premise applications that have provided good databases over the years for tracking information and doing that, but it's getting harder and harder to get access to that information where you need to be able to be on site, at a school, talking with some students, registering them for programs, from a mobile device or other things. Those sorts of services and capabilities are just lagging further and further behind with old solutions that are installed on-premise. And it's harder to report on, get access to what you need throughout. And as we get more and more excited for things like AI and how that can help us do our jobs, fill out forms for us, give us reports by just asking it questions, things like that, being on modern technology and cloud-based technology really is the requirement for that. So that's why we're very excited, as I mentioned earlier, about the Microsoft Cloud, the ability to upgrade that to enhance and address all of those situations we talked about earlier. So the tribal platform solution that Bryan will be showcasing later is all built on top of the Microsoft Power Platform, which is part of the secure Microsoft cloud that gives those things like access for mobility, to be able to use it on the go, use it any place that's been authorized by your IT department, to make sure that things are secure, that you're getting all the updates without having to wait for major deployments and upgrades every few years. They're just automatically applied, available when you need it, and giving you integrated capabilities with things that you're already using, like Excel, like Outlook, being able to look up a student profile without leaving your other applications, things like that, to be able to have quick access in the solutions that you're using. And then knowing that you're getting those ongoing updates as needed, and staying on top of what's there. The Microsoft Cloud offers all of that, while again being focused on your data being your data that not even Microsoft can control or have access to. But making the move and migrating to a cloud-based solution, you can be a little nerve-wracking at first, but rest assured that that there have been tribal organizations making that move for quite some time. There's over 350 tenants in the cloud, which a tenant being different like pockets of solutions that are deployed, that are secure, and again focused on keeping your data sovereign to you, only accessible by those that you give access to do so. With over 66, now this data is from last summer, and so it's it's probably well over 80 at this point of organizations that have made that move to Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform, all part of the Microsoft Cloud, to get the types of services and functionality that are so important today. But enough of the intro and setting the stage for why this is so important. I want to turn it over to Bryan here to be able to really walk you through what it takes to make that migration, and then get into the details of the tribal platforms education application itself.
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, what it takes to move to the cloud. So as you've probably seen, as Matt pointed out, you're probably coming from a multiple solutions that you're using to manage all the information. And so that's one of the things that we take very seriously is leveraging the information that you already have and working with you to either import that data, scan it, migrate the data, however you've got it stored today, getting that and preserving as much of that information as possible, and migrating that into a secure cloud hosted environment, and then managing the permissions. That's one of the big elements of a cloud-based solution, is that it gives you much more granular control over the access of that information, protecting it from potential data leaks, protect it from potential exposure to hackers, and those kind of scenarios. That's one of the things that we do as Arctic IT. We take security very seriously, and our biggest priority is to make sure that your data is secured in these cloud-hosted environments. And what it does is it gives you much more flexibility and portability of that information, so that you can use it, as Matt said, wherever you are and whenever you need that. So it's an important element that we factor any of the migration, whether you're scanning, importing, or actually using a programmatic migration tool to move your current data up into the cloud. And we will guide you through that process. We do that with virtually every client. We'll help you figure out the best tool or the best approach to bring that data into the cloud environment and preserve, so that you realize the smallest amount of disruption to your operations. All right.
Michelle, now would be a great time to pop up that poll to give us an understanding of the types of solutions that folks are currently utilizing.
So if you could pick, which one, or maybe multiple of these, it'd be great to get some feedback from our attendees today, to get an idea of what tools you're using today, or if you don't have a specific tool, or using spreadsheets or whatever.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Give a couple more seconds. All right, so with that, now I want to take some time. Okay, that's great information, good feedback. So appreciate that, providing that input, everyone. All right, so now what I want to do is just give you a brief introduction to what is tribal platforms. And what you need to do is think about this as being your member master database. We typically start with a tribe and deploying the enrollment application, so that the enrollment team manages who is and who isn't a member, maybe the family relationships of parent, children, grandparents and so forth, and who has contact information for the individual family or the children, and then managing the relationship, because we understand that those relationships within families change very frequently, and it's a lot of times, the education team doesn't get that information or is last to learn about these changes that may have happened, whether it be a custody situation or a family has moved and now we got to assess whether they're still eligible to attend the school that you're in. That's where we can give you a mechanism to work more proactively with the enrollment department to make sure that the family information is up to date. You get the latest status information from the individual family members and the latest contact information, whether it's phone, address, whatever it might be. And so that's an important element of being able to work across different departments and being able to collaborate as a tribal government to provide those services to your members. And we've built this on, like as Matt's mentioned, the Microsoft Power Platform. That gives us the ability to make this a very flexible application that can very easily be adjusted, configured through a low code mechanism, so that you can, if you have different business rules or different workflows that you need to apply, it's very easy to add that capability to the solution. So it's important for you to understand that what we're going to show you today is the base solution that we have made available to tribal clients. But that if your business rules are different than what the apps and the forms and so forth that I'm going to show you, we can very easily adapt those solutions or the forms to your specific business requirements. So that's one of the aspects of us working with you to make sure that we meet your specific program needs and the data collection that you need to manage as for the different programs that you're offering, as well as the grants that you're providing to your members through your education team. So that's an important element to understand how all these different pieces work together. And plus the other big element is giving your members or your families access to data. And that's where the portal comes into play. We're seeing more and more tribes deploying the portal because they want to be able to engage their members through electronic mechanisms, especially for some of the larger tribes that have geographically distributed members. They want to be able to access their information, apply for services 24/7 from wherever they may be. And that is a big game changer for many tribes to be able to improve that service delivery. All right, let's go on to the next one, Matt. So the next slide is just a quick overview of the different applications in the overall suite. Just realize that, education is one element of that, but the enrollment app is kind of that centralized where we typically start. But realize that you can deploy the education app as a standalone solution for the education team. So we recommend, and you get the most benefit out of the overall platform by using or integrating multiple applications together, but you can use it as a standalone application deployed in your environment. So family wellness is what we call the application for family and social services and the case management, the tribal court for the court team. If you offer per capita or general welfare distributions, that's where the distribution payments, being able to automate some of those processes come into play, as well as the housing. We have a housing application that just came out as well to offer that for housing departments to manage the services. So all these are together are providing those services to your tribal members. And this list is continuing to grow. We're continuing to invest and build out additional applications and functionality in this overall suite. So it's great to see this overall product really, really blossoming for tribal governments.
And Bryan, there was a great question here about the ability for education or housing or these other applications. Would they require having that stored like member citizen information in tribal platforms, or would we be able to connect with other enrollment solutions to bring that information in?
Yep, that is a great question. So you realize that, like you said, if we deploy this in a standalone application environment, that's another reason we picked the Microsoft stack of technologies is because they give us great capabilities to do data integration, whether it be data integration or application integrations. We can connect that to your existing repository, whether it's a SQL database or some other database, we can synchronize and update that information from an application that other departments may already be using, and populate or bring that over and make it read only, so that at least you can see the current information from another legacy system or that you can't change right now, but at least you're populating that list of family members in the database. So the answer to your question is yes, we can, and that's an integration. We do that very frequently with many different tribes, more specifically within the finance teams. A lot of times tribes are really pushing to, as they provide assistance for scholarship assistance or higher ed payments, they want to be able to integrate and get those payments to the students or their families faster. And that's where with the ability for the application to not only let you review and approve the payments, they can synchronize that and push that information over to the finance system. And that's done through an integration that we build out to connect and streamline that payment process. So that's another example of integration capability within an overall platform. So yeah, that's something where, if we engage with you on an education app, that's something to point out with those integrations that you would require in a deployment such as this. Great question. All right, so I'm not going to drain this slide. I'm just going to, these are some of the high points that we're going to touch on that are available in the education application. Specifically, it's going to depend on your specific education offerings, whether you're managing mainly a preschool and daycare or primarily higher education, scholarship and tuition assistance. Depends on your kind of education needs. We can tailor the solution to hide those functions that you maybe don't offer to your tribal members, and then potentially extend it for others if you've got specific programs that you want to be able to manage. So it's really a flexible solution that can adapt to your specific needs. But realize that we've built in functionality for all these specific areas that you may offer to your tribal members. Okay. And then the community portal, we'll touch on this briefly, but we'll show you an example. This is kind of a work in progress. And realize what I'm going to show you is just a base portal solution that we offer. We recognize that you may have different color schemes, different page layouts, content, text, and so forth that you want to be able to provide or guide your families as they apply for services. That's part of the reason why the integrated portal is so valuable, is that it can be very easily adapted, change text, change pages, content that's shown, and it's live. So as you take in program applications from members and process those applications to establish whether a family may be eligible or an individual is eligible for scholarships, that as those updates and approvals happen, you can notify the individual through an email with a workflow, and then post that, or that update will automatically be available through a personal login. So that portal will be, they will be able to log in themselves through a secure login, and I'll show them their information so they can see all the different services that I've applied for, my payment history, and so forth. So it's a really game changer, really big game changer for many of the tribal governments to be able to allow your members to self-serve. All right. And it just as an example, the Forest County Potawatomi in Wisconsin has actually deployed multiple applications. They're using enrollment, court, family wellness, and now education. They're deploying this application for their department and realize that it is HIPAA and high tech. We do meet quite a few compliance requirements that may apply for your team. But they use this for their member master and their case management and scholarship for everything they're doing in their education team. So, we've received some feedback and they're really liking the solution that they've seen so far. So if you would like to get in contact, let us know and we can work with you to get you the contact information for somebody to talk to. All right. And just a brief moment to touch on the application support. So Arctic IT also provides what we call Arctic Ascend support, so that not only you just buying the solution, but we're giving you the help desk, so that if there are issues, you're retraining your team, strategic sessions to understand how your team is evolving over time, And then the lifecycle support services. We're managing all those elements with a subscription-based software. So that's one of the big benefits of having this in the cloud and allowing us to be your partner to help provide those help desk support, is to be able to give you that phone, email, portal access to, hey, I need help with XYZ. We can definitely connect with you and help you out that way. All right, so now let's switch gears and we'll jump in and do sneak peek overall solution.
Yes, I will stop sharing.
All right, so
Control.
share my screen.
I just want to interrupt real quick, guys. I'm not sure if you saw one of the questions in the chat, but it was asking about data sovereignty. I know that's a big topic, and I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that at all before you went into the demo part, or we can wait until afterwards. I just want to make sure it was touched on. That's all.
Yep,
Yes.
we could definitely hit on that. Or Matt, you want to cover that?
Yeah, I did reply in the chat, but also just oftentimes if we or Microsoft is using that term data sovereignty, the term sovereignty is in general is referring to your ability to self-govern and control that information, have ultimate authority over that, where you're not at the whims of outside government entities as your own sovereign government. And so Microsoft, the way that they build their tenants and the way that they build their encryption and the encryption methods and things that they give to, and the control of that they give to individual tribes, gives them that ultimate authority. Microsoft cannot share that information with another government entity if they wanted to. And so I completely understand the point that it's a different way of looking at it, or a different way of addressing it than if it was on your sovereign land, where you physically can protect it and do that, versus the being as part of a data centers that are protected in that manner. But that is the terminology that we at Microsoft are referring to, of the sovereignty of that information, that self-governance and ultimate control of the data.
Yep, thank you for that.
Great question. Thank you for calling that up, Michelle. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Brian.
And if you want more information or want to have a deeper conversation about the data sovereignty, we've got one of our technology strategists on the team that has lived this personally, worked through with Microsoft, and can help guide you on how that makes a difference for cloud hosting and making sure that the data is sovereign to your nation and meets those compliance requirements. And they can meet with your tribal leadership to help explain why that's important. So, all right, so I'm going to jump into the demo and give you a quick sneak peek of the overall application. The first thing you're going to notice is that I'm running in a browser. So this is a truly hosted web-based application. So I'm not storing any of this data on my local laptop or my local device. That way I can have this information, use it on my mobile phone, tablet. As long as I've got an internet-enabled device, I'm logging in with what you probably have today is an Office 365 or a Microsoft 365 login that your IT team provides to you. And if you're using Outlook for your email and so forth, you're using that same login information to access the application that we deploy. And again, to that sovereignty point, we're installing the application and the data repository inside your tenant, encrypted by you, and you own the data. So you're accessing it through secured mechanisms, encrypted both in transit and at rest, and it's protecting that data. But I'm just accessing it through a web app, and I'm not bringing any data down here, which means that if I lose my laptop or it's stolen, somehow the data is still secured. It can wipe the laptop, and it's not going to affect any of your school data. So that's an important point to make sure that you understand how that data is protected for you. All right. So typically the way we start these applications is on the application. There's a couple different applications that are available to you. So what the team has done is they built a couple of different apps. One is an overall tribal education application. But if you've got a higher education team that just focuses on higher education students or service requests that arrive from your students or higher ed students, they can have an app that just focuses the elements that are important to them. Or if you have a preschool there's an application that will just focus on them. So we can adapt these applications to add and remove elements that make sense for your team. But just realize that, I'm logged in as an administrator right now, so I get to see everything. But in this environment, there can be multiple applications that are used, and they're accessed by the permissions, what's called role-based security. So you can have different individuals on your team assign different security roles, and they would only get to see the data that you give them permissions to see. So that's a really important element to understand. Like, for example, social security information for an individual student, you can capture it, but if some of the students or teachers or teaching staff should not have access to that, you can hide those fields. So you have that level of granular control of the data and access. So we typically start when we launch the application, looking at it from the standpoint of a dashboard, giving you a place to have actionable information that you can go take and make available and look at. So you can see maybe all the different grades that are offered and the counts of students in each of those grades. I can see, that maybe the certifications for your staff, if you're tracking certifications for your staff and need to make sure that they're keeping up on those certifications, you can track that information as well. But then be able to see all the active qualifications and the dates that those items are expiring or when they received them. So that's one view. And again, it's important to understand that you can actually have the ability to create a new dashboard. You don't have to use the ones that we offer out of the box. And that's another reason we picked up our platform as a starting point, because it gives you that flexibility that you can create your own dashboard that makes sense to you. So I can have a dashboard that's managing payments for the individuals and for each of the different programs that you offer to your students. I can have, maybe a general education's calendar. So I can maybe have a monthly view of the calendars and events and appointments that are upcoming or are waiting to be closed out. That's another opportunity. I can have a general education dashboard and use this as a way to see all the current active profiles, and we'll understand the terminology in here, or maybe the service request. Think of this service request as being an application for service. So whether that be maybe preschool funding or transportation needs, it might be housing needs for a higher ed student. There can be many different types of requests, and we track and manage all those applications for services and then manage them through the approval process for your team. So we'll dive into that in a moment. But this is intended to be that dashboard that gives you that actionable place to see all my current information and what I need to work on next. All right. So we typically start with this list of active contacts. So we have a slightly different view of all the contacts. So I might have a view of the students by let's just say I can search for Keaton. I can find an individual student, or I can look for Studsrud. So I can see that here's maybe a family, mom and dad, right? She's a parent and a student. So I've got great searching and filtering capabilities to find those students that are in your enrollment database, plus their family members. So it's a great mechanism to be able to drive that process. So I'm going to focus on Keaton as one of the students, so I can click on their information. Now, again, keep in mind that this may be a little bit overkill. If you don't need to track all of this information on their student contact record, we can hide that. And it's very easy for us to hide that specific information. And here's another example of that social security information that we may hide. That's the symbol of the key, indicating that there's what's called field level security. So I can create profiles of information to hide that if I don't have permissions to that. So we can use this as a way to map their current address, see their birth record information, their current age, address information. So as they move from one location or change phone numbers, I can see that address history. And for example, depending on how you work with the enrollment team, you can actually, if the family comes in and gives you I've got a new address and I need to update my contact information. I can put my new address information in here, attach the documents. Maybe it's a bill or utility bill or something. This is a place where I can attach that and have the enrollment team update that information on their permanent record. So that's a mechanism how you can collaborate with the enrollment team to make sure that that is accurate and up to date. Okay, so now think of this as being the area where I can see the information about the individual, and it's basically visible to all the staff across the tribal government. Now what we do is drill into what we call a student profile record. Think of this as being the private information that only the education team gets access to. So this is information, what's their transportation mechanism? Do they require a waiver? Do they require a media release form? If there's a picture or photo? So if there's a medical record associated, how do we track that or create that for the individual? Tracking their current, whether it's their new, or current, or former student, maybe the student number. If you don't auto or manually type in their student number, this can be auto numbered, so it can automatically increment to make sure that this information is unique for each student. And then maybe where they're currently going to school, what their current status is. So if you've got different, reason for that status, I can capture that information, the academic year, what grade level they're at. So as you can see, I can capture all the core information that you might want to track on their student profile. And then, of course, their student contact information. So I can also see here who is the individual's mother. And then this record is what gives Patty, his mom, the ability to view Keaton's record on the portal. So that's a mechanism where we create the relationship of the individual to say, maybe after Keaton graduates from high school, he no longer wants to have mom have access to his portal record, so that you can remove that relationship and mom will no longer have access to view his record, and he can manage it himself when he logs in. So that's, we've got some capabilities for you to manage the permissions and the access level that the student or the family defines for that scenario. And then being able to track maybe their GPA history, right? So you can see their chronological GPA records, the classes that they're currently enrolled in, and the start and end dates, what school they're in related to that, and what type of class that is. So you can see that information from a student's perspective to be able to track where they're going to school, what classes are they in, and then individual grades related to that. And then we also on here track the individual service requests. So this, for example, I'll click on this one to say that, hey, here's an individual, he applied for transportation assistance. So we can then take that service request, tie it to a specific year. Is it, when did they apply for those service? What's the approved, or are they approved for that funding? And then if there's additional information you need to capture related to the class or school or the program that it's related to, this is where we can tie that funding mechanism to a specific program, and then manage if there's an assessment that needs to be created to see whether it makes sense to give them that approval. And then it can, of course, if you have multiple or tiered level approvals for these kinds of requests, we can support that as well. And then depending on the program, there can be financial caps that apply. So this is where you could say for this specific program, this is the cap amount that comes from that program, and how much are we requesting, and have they hit that cap? So now all of a sudden you can have complete control over the funding that is made available to the individual by program, and make sure that they're not we're not providing more funding, unless of course you do allow them to override and provide them more funds. That depends on your policy and how that's managed. And then of course you create those payment requests so that you can see those payment requests, whether they're approved and the date that those payments were actually made. So that's an important element to be able to track that information related to the individual. And then of course, depending on certain scenarios, you may have the request for services, but that is time dependent. So not only can it be a financial limitation for those types of programs, but we can also have this mechanism to manage the time that they have to, that if we offer to them, they have to submit the completion to show that they are eligible, and they manage that, those requirements to meet that. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the student profile. So now, of course, if there's appointments that need to be created related to, providing counseling services or whatever it might be, if there's attendance records that you need to be able to track, maybe excused absences or something like that, you can capture those records here. School incidents, if there's maybe an incident related to a medical situation, or especially in like a preschool or a K through 12, maybe somebody got injured or there was a medical emergency, I can capture that information right here very easily by saying, who's the teacher, the date that it happened, and I can have multiple with different, it could be an accident, and I can pick the date, and I can just say, fell in the parking lot, right? And they maybe got injured, and were they taken to the physician? So this can be a way to capture records and information about that, and what kind of communication was provided. Did I communicate that to the parent or a caregiver or something like that? So it's great information that makes it part of their student records, so you can capture that detail. And then again, from the student perspective, this is where I can collect all the payments that have been reviewed and approved for this individual. So I can use this as a mechanism to see from the student all the money that they've received, but then I can have another view of this from the actual program that they were applied for and see that information related to that. So we can have credentials or tutoring, if there's tutoring that's offered to them, or as they're getting into higher education, we may need the work experience records to track that information, or we can track those college visits. So there's lots of information that we can also record related to this this individual's record. So then that becomes a very valuable way to manage that. All right, so now I'm going to take another quick moment to talk briefly about the schools. So I can pick the Escondido High School, so I can see this as a school, the accreditations, the address information, and maybe their students or their teachers, and the classes that they offer. So this is an easy way to then relate the students to these classes through this mechanism. So I'm creating all these things ahead of time, getting the schools and the classes created. And then once I can then click on one of these to then be able to say, okay, I'm going to click on grade 9. And I can see that Peggy is the teacher, high school, the grade year, what type of class it is, and then see all the students that are actually in that grade. So this is where we can capture all that information about those students and who's in that class, and then populate that, use that for different reasons, for either grades or for class trips or whatever it might be. So that's how we contract related to the individual schools, the classroom details, and then from the other side of that, use the list of the student classes. So I can see, for example, the higher education participants, preschool roster, or many different types of ways of querying the information on these records. And I know we're running up against time, so I'm gonna quickly move through and touch base on some of the programs. So this is the mechanism where, for example, you can have multi-tiered, multi-layered programs. So on this program, I can have this notion of a master program. This can be for higher education students as an example. So there can be the cap amount. This is where I define the cap amount and the overall program budget and the dates that this program runs. And then I can see how many service requests. So how many people have applied for these services, and which ones are in review and which ones are approved, and for how much did they apply. So I can track all those. And then any payments that I have made in the past, I can capture that information, how many were approved and those amounts. So I can roll that information up to be able to see all the funding that's been applied. So when you're doing your grant reports, this is a place where you can collect all the information for who received the funds, and then I can generate the demographics of those individuals, their ages, maybe where the service area and so forth, to be able to generate those reports. But then, of course, if you break this master program down into sub-programs, this is where you can track those individual sub-programs. So maybe in this higher education, I can track that, if I'm offering assistance for housing, I could track that as a sub-program. And again, I'll track all the different applications for just the housing, or whether they're waitlisted or approved for these funds. So again, so I can track multiple tiers of this and collect all that information in one specific area to ease and streamline your reporting for the grants that you likely receive for these programs. All right, so as you can see, there's lots of different capabilities to manage medical records, or if there's students have allergies that they need to track, I can capture all that information related to their student profile record. So that's just one element of that. So I'm going to switch gears now and just briefly touch on the portal element. So now I'm going to pretend that I'm Patty. I'm Keaton's mom. So I'm logging into the portal, and so I've got this mechanism to sign out, and I can use a login that I use. So I'm going to save this, and now all of a sudden, because I'm signing in with my login, I get access to all my information. So I can submit change requests, update my contact information. But now I have the ability to then view my education record, see that, hey, Keaton is one of my children. I can see that he's approved for one of these service requests. So I can update that information and keep that current, or see the status of that. But I can also track my profile. So I see that, Keaton is showing the record that's in the education application to the parent, so they can see their current status, their grade level, and what their information is. And then if you want an education calendar, I can provide this as a way for the parents to be able to log in and see, dates and information that you maybe want to drill into, or offer them to download documents, or registration deadlines, so to speak. That might be the place where you can see that calendar of events and so forth that are upcoming. So it's a great way to show them, like, the payments or the education resources, maybe a list of documents that you want them to be able to download and have access to. Or if you need them to do a recertification or registration on an annual basis, that's where this re-verification can come into play. But there again, it's define this as being a flexible way to you to present the information to the students and the families, so that you can have the forms of information that they may need to fill out today on paper. They could potentially fill those out electronically through the portal, and then create that application for service, and then submit that for your team through this, what we call the service request. So I can see all those service requests. Maybe they're the applications by month, or the applications by program. So I can have this great mechanism to be able to find this information. All right, so I know that was a whirlwind tour of the overall application, but we can definitely, if you want to see more information, please reach out to Matt, or we'll get in touch with you and do a more in-depth demo, or showing you the solution on a one-on-one mechanism. So with that, I will stop sharing and hand the screen back to Matt. You're muted, Matt.
All right, thank you, Brian. Now I've been trying to address some of the questions throughout as we've been going. As I'm pulling up the rest of our slide deck, Brian, we've had a couple of questions regarding contact type, kind of what that does in the system. And I described a few different things and how that can be changed. But could you give any, just a high overview of what the contact type is kind of used for, and how that can change throughout the system?
When you say contact type, are you talking like
student versus parent and stuff like that,
or uncle or something like that? So yes,
yeah.
Typically that's where you could collect that information from the enrollment. So if you've got that family set of relationships already in enrollment, we can bring over that relationship record, and then be able to give you the flexibility to say, hey, the mom can have full content or full access to contacting the staff based on for the student. But the dad, maybe there's a custody situation and dad doesn't have contact permissions. So you have that ability to set, the individuals that can have contact to the student based on their, relationships to people that are already in the system. and you can create those and manage those relationships specifically within their student profile. So that's where you can go to those individual students, or they're all your kids, and manage those contact permissions for other family members. And in there you could specify what that relationship type is, or the relationship, whether they're a family member or a neighbor, for example, or a caregiver.
Very good. And then what about a follow-up question to that was in regard to communications? Like, can that filter into the ability to send like mass emails out to all parents and things like that?
Yeah, so that's an area where we've kind of, yes, there is the ability to manage communication. So there's a timeline. So let's say, for example, you send an individual email to a parent in Outlook. You can actually relate that email to their contact record inside the system, so that you have a record of that email being sent to the individual. And then as you converse back to that parent through that email, that conversation history can be captured on that contact record, so that it's not only in your mailbox, it can be for the team to view if needed, so that they can see that communication history. The ability to send and receive bulk emails, that's one aspect where we probably need to talk a little bit more about that, because it's typically the volume in the emails that you send out. We need to be careful that if you're sending large volumes of email, you could potentially run into issues where your email may be blacklisted, right? If you could be considered a spam generator. So we need to be careful, and we can work with those scenarios to make sure that we're meeting your requirements. But yes, absolutely, you can create bulk emails or create mechanisms to generate a workflow that will send out emails on a regular basis, or to automated notifications when those actions need to be taken for recertification or re-registration for your parents. So that's one of the reasons we've chosen the workflow capability, is you can automate those scenarios. But if you truly want bulk email, where you're literally going to be sending thousands of emails, that's where we need to be careful around the management of those email routing, as Michelle and the TribalHub folks have to deal with all the time, right? Because they're generating thousands of emails, and they need to be very careful about not being considered a spam router. So great question.
Very good. Thank you.
Oh, and actually one more point to add to that. Email is one element, one request that it isn't in the solution right now, but we've demonstrated that we can do it. There is the ability to implement SMS text sending and receiving from an individual record. So we don't have the ability right now to bulk send. We can do that with a third-party add-in, but you can send individual SMS text messages to the family members. I know that's becoming a more important communication approach as kids get younger, compared to me, I guess, that they prefer SMS text message versus email, right? So that's a trend that we're seeing.
And as a couple of final questions here. One about, is there a way to communicate through the portal? Absolutely. The community portal could support not only outbound communication, where folks coming into that portal can see updates and things that are happening, but also the ability to receive requests and applications for services and things from students and parents. If they need to send in transcripts and other things for proof, the community portal can definitely support that. And then I think the last question we'll have time for today was back to the contact types. What can a contact? Are there scenarios where a contact might have more than one type?
So right now that it has one, I could foresee that being the ability to add additional, so that multiple contact types. We could certainly look at that and look at the scenario of what you're trying to do, and adapt a solution for that requirement. So yeah, I'd love to have a conversation around how you're using that, or what the requirement is, and how we can adapt the solution to meet that requirement.
Okay, thank you. And that's a great reminder that for what we saw today, that was just a sneak peek of kind of the base portion of the application. But a big reason why we've built the applications using the Microsoft Power Platform is the ability to address, add functionality that are specific and unique to how your tribal education program may offer and the types of services that you're providing. So if there's things that you're doing, or if you're using your legacy versions of the applications right now and you didn't see some things that you thought you might, just know that what we just saw was a quick view of the base, and there's more functionality and the options to adapt that, as Bryan was saying, to meet the unique requirements of your education department. With that, we'd love to chat and follow up with you specifically after this webinar, but also look for us at some of the upcoming conferences as well. Obviously, TribalNet conference here in just a few weeks. We're gearing up and excited for that to be at booth 621. And we're also going to have a team at the National Indian Education Association convention in California in October. So over the next couple of months, we'll be there and around, and would love to have the opportunity to chat with you face to face if you're attending one of those conferences. We've gone through a lot of the questions that have come in at this point, and again, we've already gotten some contact information for folks that requested some follow-up, so we could dive into some things more deeply already. As you have that, here's contact information for Bryan and myself. Michelle, thank you for dropping that into the chat for everyone as well. We'd love to have more conversations with to be able to talk more in depth as to how this might be a great fit for your organization.
Bryan and Matt, thank you so much. Great presentation. Thank you for all the questions, everybody. Loved the engagement. And again, first time we've done an education one, and I think it was amazing, and looking forward to seeing how some real success stories, across tribal country, Indian country soon. So encourage everybody, definitely step by their booth. It's always a great one, and Arctic always has some great swag. So say hi to Matt and Mary and Bryan and team at TribalNet. And if you have any questions, look for that email tomorrow that will also have contact information and a recording of today's webinar. And with that, everybody, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.